Welcome to the coolest stuff on the planet.
Greetings, fellow humans. I am Matthew. And who are you?
I'm Rachel, and this is a podcast. It is a podcast that we call the coolest stuff on the planet.
This is true.
Are you laughing at me?
Yes.
But you're laughing.
100%.
So it is the coolest stuff on the planet, and we do talk about the coolest stuff, so we're going to do that right now.
Yep.
Right?
Hop in.
All right. So today's topic is Masada Fortress, which is located in what is now southeastern Israel.
Yes, it's located on a cliff high above the Dead Sea. It's in the Judean desert, and this fortress complex, it's steeped in history. It's a legend. It's got legends that were written about it.
It's legendary.
And it's also a source of national pride.
Let's talk a little about this fortress. The fortress was not initially fortified by Herod the Great. He later came and added a lot of the things, a lot of the structures that we see today, sometime between 37 and 31 BC.
So Masada functioned as King Herod's palace during the winter, but more importantly, it functioned as his year-round refuge from his enemies, and he had some enemies, because apparently he wasn't very popular with his Jewish subjects. And there are several reasons why Masada was a perfect choice for King Herod, and the first was the location, because it's located on a high plateau, right? We said that.
Yep.
And if you look at these pictures, I mean, this thing, it's hard to get to.
Yeah.
So, and second of all, if an invading force could get up these banks, like, look, I mean, just look at the sides here. If they could make it up there, you've got a giant wall that you have to break through once you get up to that point.
So this fortress is impregnable, practically. It was already fortified, but Herod, who was paranoid because he wasn't popular with his subjects, he added his own fortifications, a wall, and some towers and things like that. And he also added some luxuries because he liked his creature comforts. So he built some fancy palaces, some luxurious bathhouses. There were storehouses full of all of these luxurious goods. All sorts of lavish structures.
Yeah, and Masada is most famous in Jewish history and culture for a different reason, for a completely different time period. A while after Herod died, in 66 AD, the Jewish people rebelled in what was called the Great Revolt, and they actually captured Masada, which was at the time a Roman garrison.
And so the only historical account of these events at Masada was written by a Jewish historian who surrendered to the Romans. And so at the time of these events, he was actually in Rome. And his name was Josephus Flavius, or at least that was his Romanized name. So according to Josephus's accounts, a group of slightly less than 1,000 Jewish rebels, they're also called zealots, and they were men, women, and children. They took Masada, they captured it, and they successfully used it as their base of rebel operation, Star Wars style, for several years.
So they used it as the last stand against the Romans. And according to Josephus, somewhere around 73 and 74 AD, the Romans, they laid siege to the fortress that was occupied by the Jewish people. So they built camps in the surrounding area, and then they built a wall, like a siege wall or a circumvallation wall, all the way around.
That was a cool new vocabulary word for us.
Yes.
Circumvallation wall.
Oh, yes. So they built this wall around Masada on basically the valley that's surrounding it. And here's where it gets crazy. I've always wanted to say that.
It sounds familiar to me, Matthew. Why is that?
I don't know. But then they built a massive siege ramp from their fortified western side all the way up to the western gate. And they used a bunch of stones. It was just tons and tons of stones and earth that they built this ramp up to the gate. Then they used a battering ram, rolled it all the way up to the gate, burst in, and what did they find?
Well, not a happy sight. So when they finally break in, they find that all but very few of the rebels that were camped in Masada, I think it was 2 women and 5 children, according to Josephus, but they'd all decided to commit mass suicide and burn most of the fortress around them, and they did that rather than surrender to the Romans.
It's a tragic story, but it's also a source of national pride for Israelis, and that makes the Masada Fortress a popular destination specifically for domestic tourism.
Apparently even school children are often taken to Masada. to see everything, because it's such a sort of heroic national story. Okay, so after the siege, the site was unoccupied for some time. Then it was occupied by Byzantine monks in the 5th century, and it kind of languished until the 19th century. And so throughout the 19th century, the site was rediscovered, it was surveyed, and it was excavated, primarily in the 60s. A lot of work was done in the 60s.
And then the site was turned into the Masada National Park in 1966. And since then, they've found all kinds of fascinating artifacts and structures around there. And most of these appear to confirm Josephus's account. You've got old coins, pieces of pottery. There's even the Roman encampments. You can find them down on the western side.
But you see these things that look like kind of rectangles.
It's at the wall even. You can see the circumvallation wall around, which is pretty awesome. And
the siege ramp, of course, which is hard to miss.
So yeah, even pieces of pottery that seem to indicate, they kind of show you evidence of the idea of casting lots, kind of like drawing straws or flipping coins to figure out who was going to kill whom and in what order, and who was going to stay alive till the end. That kind of thing.
Well, at least that's a theory.
That's the theory.
They don't know for sure. So one really neat thing about Masada, which we've talked about here, is these Roman siege works that we've been talking about. It's pretty much the oldest, most complete example of a Roman siege system in the world, which ain't nothing. That's pretty cool. You can also see the remains of the camps, as we said, the siege ramp, the siege wall. Oh,
and the best part, you can actually ascend to the fortress via the Roman assault ramp, so you can kind of follow the path that they took to get in.
You can pretend that you're laying siege to Masada.
Yeah, grab a tower shield, maybe I don't know, a large sword, and just make your way up there. And there's also, if you don't want to do that, if that's a little weird for you, if you kind of have an out-of-body experience as a Roman or something, you don't want to do that.
You're not a big fan of laying siege to stuff.
Yeah, you can just take this. There's a path. It's called the snake path. It's this crazy twisting path that's supposed to be really difficult to get up. And it's kind of, it is difficult, right? So if you're not into climbing, maybe you don't want to do that. So there's also a cable car you can take, and that'll get you pretty close to the summit, and then just climb the rest of the way.
You know, I would probably say that I would take the snake path, but I would end up taking the cable car.
Maybe there's a halfway point on the snake path for people to desert.
Aside from all these historically interesting tidbits and places, the view from the fortress, especially at sunrise, is said to be spectacular. And I can imagine, because you're on this cliff top, you have the Dead Sea over here. I can imagine it's probably pretty neat. Oh,
it is. And that's Masada, everybody. It's pretty interesting. It's got a lot of history, a bit tragic, very tragic. And I hope you enjoyed it. But now it's time for some viewer/listener/human mail.
I like human mail. Maybe we should keep that.
So this is an email from viewer/listener/human Ryan, titled Napa Valley. Hey, Matt and Rachel, I wanted to say that I love the podcast. I watch all the time, and it's great! I love learning about all the cool stuff there is in the world. I just watched your Albuquerque podcast about all the hot air balloons, and I live in Napa Valley in California, and I work for a hot air balloon company here. And one of our pilots has flown in the Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta at least once. Anyway, it'd be cool if you could do a podcast on the Napa Valley. I know it isn't the most interesting place in the world, but it is still a pretty cool and beautiful area, not to mention the most famous wine-growing region in the world. Again, I love the podcast. Thanks for reading. Sincerely, Ryan from Napa.
Well, thanks, Ryan. We will look into that.
Yes, I like Napa Valley. I like wine.
Sounds fairly, I don't know what he's talking about. Napa Valley, I'm pretty sure, is probably fascinating.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we're going to look into that. We'll see what we can do. And in the meantime, while we're doing that, what are we going to be doing, Matt?
Geez, I'm not really sure. I was thinking about excavating below our building just to see if there's anything down there, because I think my theory is that there's some kind of ancient dinosaur wizard burial ground below our building. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow. Well, while Matt is doing that, Amanda and I are going to be hanging out on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. If we're lucky, Matt might come and join us sometimes.
Maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of dinosaur wizards to uncover.
Makes sense. We'll also be reading emails. And speaking of which, if you would ever like to send us a little email with a suggestion, a topic idea, a cool story, a funny picture, whatever, just email us at travelpodcast@howstuffworks.com. And I guess that's a wrap.
It is.
For more on this and thousands of other topics, visit howstuffworks.com and let us know what you think. Email travelpodcast@howstuffworks.com. Don't forget to check out our other podcasts, free on iTunes.